Are live here on Project Next. And I know you're only seeing my face right now, but don't you worry. I am going to bring on somebody to chat with me. And this is kind of going to be hopefully a recurring segment. I am lucky enough to have the new chair of the Indiana Democratic Party with me today. Her name is Corinne Tallian. And if that name sounds familiar to any of y'all in Indiana, it's because she has been working in Indiana politics for quite some time. She served in the Indiana State Senate up in northern Indiana, District 4 out of Portage for, gosh, over 17 years. If I'm doing my math correctly, 16 years. She's also been very active in Portage Township and in the county. And just a couple of weeks ago, she was elected as Indiana's new chair of the Indiana Democratic Party. So it is April 1st, which means this is the first full month of her tenure with the Indiana Democrats. So please help me in welcoming Corinne Tallian.
Hi, Corinne. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Corinne?
Good to see you again.
It's good to see you too. Corinne and I were just chatting a couple of minutes ago before we went live that Corinne and I have actually known each other for quite some time. We kind of each jogged each other's memories, but back in my TV days at our PBS station up here in Northern Indiana, I used to have Corinne on a politics show that I was producing. And because it was a PBS show, a nonpartisan show, we always did our best to try to get members from both parties, but we know in Indiana how difficult that is to do. I always had dozens of Republicans to choose from and just a handful of Democrats who were within driving range of the studio. So I was happy that Corinne was one of those Democrats. And Corinne, you've been out of the state Senate now for, over 3 years, 4 years. Is that right?
I resigned. It was November of 21 that I
No, okay.
that I left. Yeah.
That you left. What was the impetus behind that decision?
16 years in the super minority takes a toll.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I spent a lot of time there fighting, not fighting, trying to get along. Things were beginning to really go sour. The Republicans, the new class of Republicans in the state Senate were nasty. They were just, I mean, it was getting really, really frustrating if just to be there. And I finally decided, maybe my time is better spent somewhere else. I did leave a year early on my after 16 sessions. I went out the same way I came in. Someone had my predecessor had resigned, leaving a year on her term, which meant that I could shift in, be an incumbent, get reelected, and run as an incumbent. And it was a better way to ensure that you save the seat, if you will.
Yes.
So I literally brought up the bench. I brought Rodney Pohl to the caucus. I endorsed him. I helped get him on and helped get him reelected. So, yeah.
And Senator Pohl, he is a fun one to watch, and he is, building that bench that you mentioned. What did you see in Rodney that let you know this is somebody that I want to cultivate? I want them to have a bigger presence.
I didn't know him well when I first met him, but one of the interesting things about Rodney that really drew my attention, he had been a public defender in Indianapolis. He was hired as a city attorney by Karen Freeman Wilson when she was mayor of Gary, and Rodney worked to help get her elected. She lost. The next mayor, Jerome Prince, kept Rodney and promoted him.
Mm-hmm.
And when Jerome Prince lost, the next mayor, Eddie Melton, kept Rodney as corporate counsel. And I figured, I mean, that was one that really struck me, is there is a guy who can move through three different mayors who were in opposition to each other and keep his head above water and was obviously liked by all of them. So that was a real bell went off for me.
That he had some longevity there across administrations. Yeah.
Right. And then I
So
got to know him and realized, he has deep roots in the whole Northwest Indiana region.
mhm, he sure
Yeah,
does.
I'm real happy with Rodney. I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah, and it's a difficult job there, being the super duper minority there in the state house.
Yes.
Well, so it was just a couple of weeks ago that the state party held the election for chair, and I, did get a lot of questions from people who follow my videos, and because this is a process not all of us are familiar with, and so we kind of go through a several week thing. We get the county chairs, we get the district chairs, and then ultimately everyone gathers in Indy to select the new chair of the party. And this opening existed for, so everyone has some background, is our chair for the last few years was Mike Schmuel. He decided to not seek another term. So it was an open race for chair. And there were several people who threw their hat into the ring, familiar names. We had Jennifer McCormick, Valerie McCrae, Derek Camp, people who were kind of floating ideas. And ultimately, it came down to you and Destiny Wells as the last two candidates. Um,
Right.
what do you think spoke to voters, spoke to the people choosing the chair as why they went for you over someone like Destiny?
Um, Experience. I think experience. I've been a person who's been around state politics for a very long time. Even before I went to the state senate, I was involved in county politics in Porter County. Then, I went to the state senate. I did a lot of work there. I made a lot of connections there. Uh, I was the voice of labor for in the state senate for 16 years. That was my job. I was also on the state budget committee. I was on appropriations. um, I was Senator Doobie.
Yes,
People
you
know
were.
me.
I remember that. You
People
were.
know me. People
Yes.
know me
Yep. You were a
across the
champion. Yes.
state. And I think that, it it's a question between brand new or experience, and I think that that's just the way it went.
What is there anything that you can see, because it's very different when you're looking at a race within your own party, right? This is not a Republican versus a Democrat. So what, even from Destiny or from the other candidates, what pieces of their talent or their approach do you think are things that could be incorporated into the party in the next few years?
Well, that's an interesting way to put that question. It's good. So I'm just going to tell you this quick story about something that happened to me years ago when I lived in Ogden Dunes and became the precinct committee person. Um, there were a handful of Democrats here. And one year I found that somebody was actually running against me for precinct committee person. And I was surprised, not because I thought that I owned the position, but because I thought I knew all the Democrats who were ready to get involved. So he was new. I won. The next day, I called him and said, John, you really want to get involved in this? Be my vice. So he became my vice committee person, and that just on a small level. But we've been working together now for 30 years. Um, and and I hope to be able to do the same things. Every one of those people uh, has talents, has something to bring to the table. And one of the things that I want to do as the new chair is expand the what I call the committee groups. And I have set up, I've got a list of 15 or 20 different issues that I think could all have their own committee. And I am looking to talk to all those people, including the people that did not vote for me, and get them involved on some level.
And somebody like Destiny Wells, coming at this from a very different approach that the both of you have, honestly. But there was some social media fodder after the election happened of some folks who, really were in Destiny's camp and were kind of disappointed. What do you say to those folks who maybe did not support you, didn't vote for you, or felt as if what they were hoping for didn't happen? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I know about the social media stuff. Um, but I will tell you that for every post that was on social media, I had 100 texts from people all over the state saying, "Congratulations, and what can we do to help you?" I do not want to exclude any of the people who were disappointed. In a primary situation within a party, there's somebody wins and somebody loses, but in the end, all have to we're all in the same boat, and we all have to be rowing in the same direction, and I hope we can get over that now and move forward.
How do you feel about the leadership that has been assembled within the Democratic Party? So you not only have you, of course, we have a new vice chair, we have a new secretary, we have a new treasurer. There are a couple of different county folks that have changed hands and district folks that have changed hands around the state. When you look kind of at the bench that you have to choose from, what talent do you see there?
Well, so Alex Narenda, comes from voter registration in our largest county. Alex is being tasked with some help, of course, with heading up at a major voter registration drive across the entire state. We're going to need that if we want to get our people back and identify the people who need to get out to vote. Erin is a very enthusiastic. She's our new secretary. Very enthusiastic. Has helped run campaigns. Helped Matt McNally run his campaign. I think we see some energy there. Mike Griffin. For any of you who know Mike Griffin, he is just a stalwart. Mike Griffin is a font of knowledge. Sometimes you ask him a question and you're going to get a thesis. But Mike knows what he's doing, and I expect that he's going to help us with not only with the finance and the treasurer's duties, but he's also a certified parliamentarian Robert's Rules of Order person. I'm not sure what it takes to get certified in that field,
That
but
sounds so boring. But
I
yeah,
know,
yeah.
right? But Mike's got it.
Yep.
Um, and he can also help with our compliance. We have I've discovered this, we have a lot of just compliance forms and things that you have to fill out every time you raise money. And these are mostly federal requirements. So I'm hoping that Mike can help with all of that. And let's see. I You asked me about new county and district leaderships. I have made it um, the choice of mine that in I'm going to personally call every county chair and every new district chair in the state. Now that's 90 some. Well, it's actually over 100 phone calls that I have to make. I thought I could do it last week.
Didn't get there.
I didn't quite get it,
Yeah.
but I am working on that list. I'm probably through maybe half. So it was a big effort to do that, and I'm talking to new people all over the state. If I didn't get to you yet, it's just because I didn't get to you yet. We had a county chairs Zoom call for inviting all the county chairs, and everybody who came to that, I called them first. So I am trying to reach out to everybody. I'm hearing a lot of different things about what new people need. Some new people are young, some new people are old. A lot of them need training. A lot of incumbents need other kinds of support from state parties. So uh, it's my it's my goal to put all that together, make all those phone calls, start making lists of what different parties need.
And so Alex Narinda, your new vice chair, he has a history working with charter schools. Is that something, as we kind of look at where education is sitting in the state of Indiana, kind of hovering in this private public battle? We're seeing the upcoming expansion, vouchers becoming universal. Is there a unified message of the Democratic Party in the state when it comes to education and putting all of our emphasis behind traditional public, or do you see, Alex's inclusion and leadership as being maybe leaning towards charters as well?
Let me just spell that right now. Alex worked one job, little job, for a charter education school at a time that he needed a job. He's raising 3 kids himself and taking care of a sick mother. He now sends all of his children to Indianapolis public schools. I don't think there's any message about Alex and charter schools.
Good. Well, I'm glad you laid that out there, because there is, looking at, and it's different too. We see Indianapolis public schools facing challenges that are different from what we see in other school corporations. And it's population, it's just density. There are different challenges when you have that many people in a small area. And that's going to vary widely from some of our more rural counties when it comes to education, because that seems to be a pretty consistent issue that Democrats and Republicans we can have a really clear split there. But on education. And so when it comes to advocating, or how do we get to a place where maybe we can claw back some of the things that have been taken from public education? What role do you see the Democratic Party in the state playing in attempting to reverse some of the harm?
Oh, great question. I mean, look at what just happened in the last week. Our president basically disbanded the Department of Education, and our governor was there in Washington with 3 other governors supporting it. It's obscene. Public education has always been, and will continue to be, one of the major pillars of society, and something that the Democratic Party has always worked for. How we get some of that back, I don't know, but I've got Jennifer McCormick online, not right this minute, but I've got Jennifer McCormick. I have been talking to her about possibly being head of an education committee within the Democratic State Party. She hasn't told me yes yet, but I'm going to keep pushing her. We have some great educators in this state that can help. I'm not an educator, but I always voted with the teachers, with the collective bargaining, with we need to get some of our legislators out of education, because they have no idea what they're doing. So I've got a team that I would like to put together to help do that.
And another committee that you're looking at that was established by your predecessor when kind of the new rules were adopted, which was the end of 2024, includes now an ethics committee, and looking at different allegations, potentially having kind of a place for people to go. We saw, a couple of our state senators, David Niezgotsky and Greg Taylor, have different allegations come out against them over the last year or so. What role do you see an ethics committee playing in handling some of those allegations and kind of being, maybe being the first line of where somebody can go when they have an issue?
Well, it's an interesting thing. So I want to go back a minute, if I can, to the Curtis Hill fiasco.
Yeah.
So you know, that
Elkhart County zone. I'm in his county. So yes,
okay.
we apologize here in Elkhart County for Curtis Hill. I didn't vote for him, but I'm sorry.
Yeah. So when we had that, it it became clear to all of us that we all needed to have some better policies and trainings in place. During that time, the legislative, both houses, four caucuses, uh, chose someone, a woman from each caucus, to help put together an ethics policy and a sexual harassment uh, reporting and you know procedures policy. I was on that committee. Um, so, but I also want to say that, it's a very fine line between what the state party can do as a party versus what the legislature can do. So when some of those things came up against Greg Taylor or against Dave Nizgatsky, I do believe that those things needed to be dealt with within the legislature because they are elected officials. Now, at the same time, we had these other allegations about Tom Cook that eventually resulted in Mike Schmiel put together a code of conduct, all right, for state party people, and not just within the small office that we have, but that should apply to state party officials across the state. So he put together that code of conduct. It was just passed in December. I am currently right now putting together a new first ever ethics committee who will be tasked with dealing with those kinds of complaints. And they will right now be working with the rules committee because we need to set a process. So we set the process. Who do you make the complaint to? Who gets notice? All those due process procedures, and then the ethics committee will be there to um, basically do an investigation, hold a hearing, whatever's needed. So that is in the works.
And do you have any timeline on the ethics committee of when you think it'll kind of be up and rolling, a chair for that committee that you have in mind?
Yes, we are having. So when I put these things together, I am bringing this to the state central committee for confirmation, if you will. And we expect the next state central committee, I believe it's going to be on March 10th. If that's a Saturday, that's the date.
Is that May
I'm
10th?
sorry. I'm sorry. May. Yeah.
May. Okay. So we've got a little over a month left for that one.
Right.
Okay, good.
Well, and there will be a whole thing. There will be a whole lot of things done because as chair, I'm also tasked with appointing several deputies and a party attorney, all those kind of things. And all of those I expect to be presented at the next central committee meeting in May.
In May. Okay. And those then go up for a vote, right? In front of the participants? Or is it kind of just a motion
It's
for
not
acceptance?
an election. It's a vote for confirmation.
For acceptance or confirmation. Yeah. Okay. And I know, Karen, you mentioned what's going on, in DC with the Department of Education and a myriad of other nonsense. How part of the frustration as somebody paying attention to state politics, state legislatures for quite some time is the kind of seeping of these national political issues into our state politics, issues that we as a state, whether it's as a legislator or as a party, we don't really have any control over. And so when we're looking at something like education, like economic development, Medicaid funding, tax structures, et cetera, how much of that do you think the state party can help with from an educational perspective? Because if most people are going home and turning on the national news at night, whatever channel they're watching, they're not hearing anything about Indiana. And over the past election cycle, people talked about immigration. They talked about trans issues. They talked about things that, of course, they're coming into the state level, but they're not necessarily what your state legislator is going down to Indianapolis to work on. How do we start to really educate our voters here in Indiana about the impact of Indianapolis on their lives and how we can start looking at more, I guess, data driven decisions of how we make policy instead of being swayed by a national tide?
Um, exactly. Exactly. We need to do exactly that. And well, first of all, I have to disagree when you say we have no control over what's going on in Washington. We do. It's called voting.
Just
And
the voting, yes.
yeah, and it's just a terrible thing for me to realize that so many people stayed home in the last election. And that's one of the things that we need to work on. But to get back to your question, every single thing that is going on in Washington right now is affecting people in the state of Indiana. When Martin O'Malley, former governor of Maryland, was tasked by Biden to revamp the Social Security hotline and customer service. He did it. They got customer service down to like 2 minutes, and they were in a great place. Trump and his chainsaw man came in and basically dismantled the whole thing. And so now, we've got grandma who wants to change her address, has to drive 50 miles uh, to a Social Security office and wait in the line that may be running around the block. These things are having effect on our state, and one of the things that we have a whole plan for uh, doing exactly the kind of thing that you're doing: podcast information, putting people's stories out there to show how what's going on in Washington does affect our lives here. The same thing can be said of veterans. The same thing can be said of the national parks. You want to visit your national park this summer? Good luck. So all of those things are contributing to what's going on, but there's kind of a chain of events from what happens in Washington to what happens in the state house. And a big one of those big keys right now is the fact that we're trying to put together a budget. We're trying to pass. They are trying. It's not we anymore. I'm not there. But the legislature is trying to put together a budget. We've got the Republican governor calling for tax cuts. We've even got the Republican leadership in the Senate and the House saying, "Hey, maybe we can't do that because we're going to be losing federal money." And so there's a lot of flow down that maybe a lot of people can't see. So I think it's really important that we do exactly that. We educate the public on on how that works.
And there is so much, I don't think I can use another word other than rage that we are seeing from Democrats, even right here in Indiana. I mean, we had one Republican congressional representative, Victoria Spartz, down in District 5, hold a couple of town halls last weekend. Our Lieutenant Governor, Micah Beckwith, went out to a town hall. I believe it was last night or the night before. The rage is just, I mean, it's visceral. You can feel it.
Yep.
How we need that, right? I think we need that. I think we're in a place that we understand that it exists. How do we harness that and get it to be something that actually propels us forward?
That is the key question. It's like, all right, you hold a town hall meeting, you allow people to vent their rage, and then what's the ask? What are you asking them to do? So I would say a couple of things. Um, need to channel that. Need to channel that it really is true that when a legislator or a congressman gets 50,000 letters saying, don't do this, they have to pay attention. they are paying attention, and I think they're worried right now. I mean, you can see that Victoria Spartz, I knew her when she was in the state senate. Um, she is not one to shirk from things, even if she's being told not to. She went there, but she heard a lot of people getting angry, and the GOP has to be worried about that. So the first ask is keep up the pressure. I think of a pressure cooker with the fire underneath and the steam coming out says, get fire Elon Musk, keep the fire going, turn up the flame. The other thing is, volunteer, volunteer at your local level. Uh, of course, I would be remiss as the state party chair if I didn't say, get on Act Blue and contribute some money, because all of these efforts that we, are planning to do, they all take money. So there are three different things that people can do right now, and we need to make sure that next year you get to the polls. That's the ask.
Well, I'm glad you put an ask out there because we want people to have action steps. And I wanted to ask one. I know we're running short on time here, and I hope to have you back again, Karen, so we can dive into some more questions. But curious, just being here in Indiana, we hear and I hear all the time, it's a red state. What are you doing? Give up. You're wasting your time. When we look at states that surround us that are not traditionally red states, we've got Michigan, we've got Illinois, Ohio, more swing states. What can Indiana Democrats and the leadership of Indiana Democrats, what can we learn from those other states that maybe we can incorporate here and start to move the needle?
I looked at Wisconsin, going on, it was the right to work days. Wisconsin moved from right to left. There are a lot of people, maybe Destiny was one of them, but there are a lot of people out there who have been saying for years that Indiana's not red, it's purple, but we don't vote. So, we know we were down 300 and some thousand votes in last year's election. Um, those people need to be out there, and they need to bring that rage to the voting booth.
And 2026, I mean, it's serious. It's right around the corner. I mean,
It
it
is.
feels like it's coming very quickly. And just to remind everyone, I talked about this a lot in the 24 election. We only needed 4 seats, right? 4 seats to flip, to break the supermajority. And the
In the
Republican
House.
supermajority,
Yeah.
yeah,
In the House.
in the House. That's
We
right.
need a lot more than that in the state
We need
senate.
more than that in the Senate. That's all right. We'll start with the state house. We'll start making some incremental changes. If there was one thing, if you had a magic wand and there was one thing you could do to increase voter turnout, and maybe it is a combination of reducing Democratic apathy, perhaps, but what could you do vision wise to increase voter turnout?
Um, I was I went to the DNC convention, and I got there I got there on the day of that plane crash. And so I had to take all kinds of transportation to get to where this was being held. I was in a car with an Uber driver who started talking to me about the White House and how he didn't like what was going on. And then he said, but I have to admit, I didn't vote this time. So, my ears perked up. I said, wait a minute. People like me want to know why people like you didn't show up. And a couple of things he said. He said, well, he says, I'm kind of lazy, but I also didn't want to spend the day off work. So maybe, and it's going to be hard in Indiana because they're moving the opposite direction. I think we need to make it easier for people to vote. That might help get some people out. We make it easier. Maybe we start the mail-in ballot, um, program like some counties used to do, uh, but making it easier. But you also have to uh, instill in people the sense of importance of why your vote counts. I love to show people uh, election results that were, you know, one by one, two, five votes, and say your vote really does count. And by staying home, you let a small minority of people make all your decisions for you. So,
And that's a great message to kind of close with here. I say all the time, like, tell me that voting doesn't matter. If voting didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to make it harder.
yep,
And I think 2020 was a good example. Look at what we had to do during COVID time. We actually made it easier for people to vote.
yeah,
There was no increase in voter fraud, as much as the other side wants to say it, but more people voted because it was easier to vote. It's a very simple conclusion to draw.
that's right. That's right.
Well, Karen, I want to thank you. This 35 minutes went awfully quickly, ma'am. Hopefully, I can have you back. Did not even scrape the top of the list of questions that I had and stuff I wanted to dive into, but maybe next time we can chat about those.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for doing what you do. I think this is really important to get the word out to a lot of people.
Yeah, and if we keep hitting this from all sides, the party of the big tent, and welcome everybody, and remind people what Democrats are, even in a place like Indiana, maybe we can start to make some real change here.
Okay. Well, I'm done with the tent. I'm on boat.
Are you on a boat? We're in a
Boat.
boat.
Yeah,
Whatever metaphor we need,
yeah,
tents, boats. I use a barge metaphor a lot of how long it takes a big old barge to turn around.
exactly.
We got to get the stupid thing to slow down first. So if we
Yeah.
can get it to slow down and start to turn, then we can start to see some real changes. So thank you very much, Karen Tallian. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Thank you.
You take care. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for listening, for checking out. I had some comments here going. Like I said to Karen there at the end, not even close. I think I'm looking at my list here. 13, 4, I think I had about 15 questions ready. We touched on just a couple of them. I look forward to having Karen back on once again, and we can get into some more of those questions as we start moving into what will hopefully be a new, exciting, and productive future for the Democratic Party in the state of Indiana. Thank you all so much for being here.